if we want to stop working and travel and spend more time at home with our daughter, or do different things, do the things that we want to do. We work for that. We view investing and putting money away as purchasing time, and that time is priceless.
Welcome to the Teacher Money Show, the podcast dedicated to helping teachers navigate your unique financial challenges and unlock your financial superpowers. I'm your host, Shaun Morgan, a full-time teacher. That's right, I teach every day just like you, and personal financial coach. And I'm here to help every teacher, whether you are a seasoned teacher looking for fresh insights or a new educator navigating your first paycheck, to have a richer wallet, classroom, and life. The contents of this podcast are informational in nature and are not legal or tax advice, and neither I nor my guests are engaged in the provision of legal, tax, or any other advice. You should not act upon this information without first seeking appropriate advice from an accountant, financial planner, lawyer, or other professional. I'm super excited to have Ryan Cruz on the show today. Just connected with Ryan. He is the co-author of the TLDR pension plans for Texas. So, if you remember our episode that we had Carl on, where he was talking about getting into writing those, we have one of the co-hosts here, and not co-host, one of the co-authors here. And I'm so excited to have someone who's got this wealth of knowledge about, retiring and preparing for retirement to come and just talk about what he's doing in his own journey towards preparing for financially being independent later in life. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me, man. Glad to be here.
So let's just start off. I just want to know about your life and education. Where did you start? How long have you been in it? What do you teach? Tell us all about it.
My life and education actually started a little bit later. This is the second career for me. I went to college with originally dreams of becoming a teacher, and then that was quickly dashed by calculus. Decided to not be a math teacher after that, and I majored in hospitality management, got a minor in business. I spent 7 years managing really high-end country clubs in the Dallas area, and met some really cool people, had some incredible staff that worked for me, and really enjoyed it, and the things that I will always miss about that business. But what I will not miss is working nights, weekends, holidays, and all year round is not fun. So I went back to school and did an online program through the University of North Texas to get my teaching certificate for my last year while I was working in the clubs, and got into education at about 30 years old. And so this was my second career, and I've been in it now for 13 years. I have taught many, many business classes. That was what my certification fell back on, my business minor. And so I have taught personal finance for 13 years now. I really enjoy teaching the Money Matters course out here. That's kind of my bread and butter. But I've taught entrepreneurship, business management, keyboarding, the Microsoft Office suite, several things, and recently had to find myself in a PE class as well. So that's been a challenge this year. But for somebody who's been in a classroom for 13 years, finding myself in a gym is a bit odd. Not somewhere I thought I would be.
I think it's so interesting that there's all these strict requirements, like you have to get certified in this and you can't do that unless you're certified that. And then when you get into the school, they're like, we need somebody to teach PE. Yeah, mine's like we have all of these strict rules, and then we just throw them out the window when we just need somebody. Like there's no really way to get around that. I was almost a theater teacher at a school because they needed someone to do it, and they're like, okay, you like it, so go for it. Like, and then they were able to find someone, and it worked out, and I didn't have to. But they just kind of roll with whatever they're given in a lot of schools. So that's cool that you get to branch out and do something different.
Oh, really fun one too. I almost forgot to mention, a couple of years ago, I got tasked. So very similar, was not really looking forward to it, but ended up being a lot of fun, was teaching esports. Esports has been really growing And so at my last campus, I got to start an esports program, and I liked that way more than I thought I would enjoy that. That was a lot of fun.
That's cool. A lot of fun, interesting things happening in the world of education. So
No.
you had this business minor. Is that why you were interested in finance, or it was just teaching personal finance classes what grew your interest in finance? How did you come to that?
The to get my teaching certificate, I needed to have a minor, at least a minor in something, and you don't really get certified to teach hospitality. Although we have classes, those end up becoming teachers through other means. But I fell back on my business minor. I thought that would be a little bit easier, and so I just decided to go follow that path towards certification, and then found a business job. And that job entailed teaching personal finance. I've always had a little bit of an interest in personal finance. I didn't grow up with a wealthy family. We spent a little bit of time on food stamps when I was a kid. My parents were divorced. If anybody's familiar with the Dallas area, I grew up in Oak Cliff. It's not a real nice part of town. It's a little bit nicer than it used to be, but back then it was not the best part of town. Um, and so we were not a wealthy family growing up, but I was interested in it. And I did learn a lot from my parents. My mom did have conversations with me about money growing up, did sit down and show me different things and was open with me about a lot of things. But like most people, we made some good decisions and we made some really bad decisions. And so weren't always learning really the right things to do financially, but it was enough to kind of pique my interest. As I went into college, I was interested in personal finance. I remember having conversations with friends in college about finance. Anytime people had questions, they would kind of come to me. And so getting the opportunity to teach personal finance when I went into education was really a lot of fun, and really looked forward to that. But has also allowed me the time to research and look into finance and really expand on that interest that I kind of always had, but didn't really have the time to look into, as many of us don't, you know. And so being able to teach personal finance is really opened up a lot of things for myself.
Yeah, I love that. I keep begging my school to let me teach a personal finance course, and they haven't let me yet. But it would be so much fun just to be able to dive into this with kids who don't have any really like strong preconceived notions. They have like their, what like you said, like they see with their parents, but like they haven't been in it yet. So it's
Yeah.
a perfect opportunity to just like, explain something and talk about it with them and see that light bulb come on and hopefully make a huge difference in their life.
Yeah, and I love it. I love, turning that light bulb on for kids and letting them know what's possible. The first thing I do on the very first day, the first minute of class, the bell rings, I close the door. I ask my students to close their eyes and imagine what a millionaire looks like. Who are they? A millionaire in 20 years from now. What do they drive? Where do they live? How big is the house? Are they married? What kind of clothes do they wear? How many kids do they have? All of these kinds of things. And then I asked them, why didn't you think about yourself? And some of them really stop and they're like, man, because there's no way I can be a millionaire. And I tell them, I'm Mr. Cruz. I'm going to be a multimillionaire. And that's how I start off my class for the semester. And it's a pretty good hook. A lot of them, because we think of teachers as these people that just don't make a whole lot of money. And there's certainly enough of us out there complaining about our incomes. But it's not how much you make, it's how much you save and what you choose to do with it. In most cases, there's certainly some outliers, but many of us are millionaires and don't talk about it, or can be millionaires. And as the Dave Ramsey study showed, we're one of the top 5 professions for creating millionaires. And it's true. There's a lot of us out there. We're just not talking about it.
I have a sinking suspicion that the reason for that is just because statistically it's hard to have so many teachers and not have so many millionaires out of that. But I'd have to look at the study to really understand if it's like percentage wise or just like sheer numbers, you know?
Yeah,
Uh,
I'd be interested in that too. I was always curious, did they include pensions? Because our pensions alone are worth $1 million.
oh yeah, easy.
Yeah. So does that factor into it? I don't know.
Yeah, I would be surprised if they include the pension, but if you don't include the pension and you have a lot of teachers who are achieving millionaire status, that's saying that there's some really strong winds behind us that can be pushing us towards that if we just take them and go with it.
Absolutely.
So you're talking about researching for your class. I'm interested. What do you like to research? What's your favorite maybe books or like article producing organizations, whatever you call it? They're not newspapers anymore. They're not magazines, whatever these organizations are called, media organizations. What do you like to follow to learn about personal finance?
Well, even that's changed a lot through as my own personal finances have changed. The curriculum that my district provided to me was created by Dave Ramsey and his team, the Foundations in Personal Finance curriculum. And so when I started off in education, I was still in debt. Added to more debt so that I could get my teaching certificate, and it just so that was a really good thing for me to be teaching because Dave is so good at helping people get out of debt. I think he is really second to none in helping people to find their way out of debt and motivating. And it really worked for me. And so it was great. And I think a lot of what he was doing for me, teaching that in the classroom really kind of came through in my passion with my students. And so they really were able to connect with a lot of that. As I've gotten out of debt and moved towards the next phase of financial independence and wealth accumulation, my sources of information have kind of changed, and my what I bring into the classroom about that has kind of changed. I use a lot of curriculum now from I intertwine it with I still use the Dave Ramsey stuff as a base, but I intertwine it with the stuff from the Next Gen Personal Finance team. And ngpf.org is a great source for personal finance curriculum. And then, I listen to a lot of podcasts. And so I'm finding financial podcasts and learning new things and finding new things out and applying those things to my own life. And when I have students, a lot of those podcasts help me kind of break down some ideas that may be a little bit advanced and try to make them more simple so that I can bring those into the classroom.
Yeah, awesome. I think those are both great starting points. For me, I'm always saying Dave Ramsey is a fantastic place to start, not a fantastic place to end, right? So it's a good base. I mean, especially when you're dealing with students who are going to most likely be facing debt of some kind. Even the ones that are intelligent about it are probably going to hit debt at some point. Debt happens to a lot of people without
Yeah.
even trying it. So being having those tools to handle that is very important, to a nice foundation. And then of course NGPF is great stuff. So I love that.
Yeah, no, it's great. And they, my financial journey, I'm also very open with my students about, and I tell my students the week that I graduated from college, I had $7,000 in credit card debt. I had $23,000 in student loans. So I was $30,000 in debt at 23 years old, and I made $32,000 a year. And what did I do? I did what a lot of people do. I deserved something really nice. And so even though I was $30,000 in debt, I went out and added another $20,000 to it. I bought a car, like many of us do. I was $50,000 in debt the week I graduated from college, and I made $32,000 a year. It was not a fun place to be. I treaded water while I was working in country clubs, but then I found that motivation to kind of really start trying to kick that out. And that was where Dave Ramsey kind of kicked in and really helped me to manage a lot of that debt and get rid of it.
Awesome. So you had $50,000 in debt, and then you ended up not getting out of debt before you went back to school 7 years later, and you had to get a little bit more debt to go to school.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing where you were after you started teaching on your debt journey?
What do you mean where I was?
Like how much debt were you in?
Oh, the when I got really serious about debt, man, I still made some mistakes. They ended up working out okay. I bought a house when I shouldn't have bought a house. By the time I really got serious about debt was my first year of marriage. I met my wife soon after I started teaching, and we dedicated the first year of our marriage to getting out of debt. And so with her student loans and what I was holding on to, so everything besides the mortgage, we had a little over $60,000 in debt. And we dedicated the first year of our mortgage or first year of marriage. We did not go on trips. We did not eat out very much. We missed a lot of things with our friends and our family because we were very serious about paying off debt. But yeah, it was a little over $60,000, and it took us about 10 months actually to pay it off. We really buckled down and paid that off. I will admit though, the mortgage I had at the time, including my escrow and everything, was only like $800 a month. It was a very small townhome, so that really helped. I know the number sounds really impressive, but my living expenses were very, very minimal at that time.
Hey, regardless of your living expenses, that's $6,000 a month that you're
Yeah,
paying. That's really impressive.
yeah,
I'm blown away.
yeah, and we picked up extra jobs and we did extra things, uh and we really held out on I mean, there were even things I remember at the end of it, the last month or two, my wife had like holes in some of her underwear, and I was like, babe, like go buy some new ones, like it'll be okay. And she's like, no, we're almost done, we're gonna get this paid off and then I'll go replace it. And so we were very serious. I mean, we cut out a lot of things with it.
Yeah, it takes that discipline. There's if you're going to get out of debt, you're going to do it quickly. You've got to buckle down and get it done. I mean, there is a longer term route, but you're going to pay more interest and just have those chains holding you back for longer. You've got to be willing to make sacrifices if you want to get out of debt for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now that you got out of debt in that 10 months, which once again, congratulations on that. Now you got a financial goal in front of you. What are you hoping to accomplish? You say you want to be a multi-millionaire. Can you buckle down what that goal looks like more narrowly for us?
Sure. We've increased our living expenses. We built a house not long after we got out of debt, but we freed up $6,000 a month, and so we still contribute a good chunk of that now to investing. And so, not having car payments, not having credit card payments or student loan payments, all of these things help us to be able to invest. We make it a priority to max out our Roth IRAs. For a long time, I had an HSA. We made it a priority to max that out every year and tried very hard to spend very minimally out of the HSA. I contribute to a 403b. My wife has a Roth 401k. And so we are able to save and invest in the neighborhood of about 25% of our gross annual income every year, because we are both on the same page financially. We have a lot of conversations about it. We have shared goals of being able to retire early. Whether or not we do remains to be seen, but we want to have the freedom to be able to do that if we want to stop working and travel and spend more time at home with our daughter, or do different things, do the things that we want to do. But we work for that. We we view investing and putting money away as purchasing time, and that time is priceless.
Okay, so question for you on that. So you said you're maxing out a Roth IRA, you got HSAs going, a 401k going, with the goal of potentially retiring maybe a little bit early if you decide to.
Mhm.
How are you planning on approaching that when you get there? Like, there's that going to be a gap, I'm assuming, if you retire early between pension and or Social Security, if those kinds of things. What are you going to do to bridge that gap? Are you planning on just withdrawing from these accounts, taking a penalty, or withdrawing your contributions from the Roth IRA? What is your strategy or goal for that?
Good question. I'm a little bit older than my wife. I've got 6 years on her. And the pension really enables a lot too, because I will be able to retire early and withdraw on the pension if I want to at 55, which is kind of the target for us of wanting to be able to retire. And so I'll be able to take my pension to cover a lot if my wife worked part-time. That should be enough to cover expenses. We would have a mortgage paid off by that point. So again, living expenses would go way down. So that would be an option for us. But part of the money that we invest is also into a taxable brokerage account, trying to prepare potentially for an early retirement with a minimal tax hit. So we don't want to pay those fees for early withdrawals and things like that. I've also confirmed with my 403B provider that it does conform with the rule of 55 and being able to make withdrawals from my 403B. If I retire at or after 55, I will be able to make withdrawals on the 403B. So we have some options available to us, but we're also not incredibly aggressive. We're not trying to retire at 45. That would make things a little more difficult. But at 55, like I said, the pension's a big part of that. Texas provides a healthcare option through our pension. So, and it's pretty good actually. So I would be able to take advantage of that, and because that's a big concern for people that retire early is, how do you get healthcare? And so I would be able to provide healthcare for my family through the pension program here. Yeah, and so those are kind of the things that we're looking at. If I had to take a hit on taxes, I don't think I would do that. I think I would still work another year or another 2 years if I had to, even part-time. I could do that and not pay those penalties.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's great. It's amazing how like most jobs these days, you're talking about working 65, 69 and a half. If that's like where most people's trajectory is. But like teaching is set up with the pension from in most instances to be done around age 55, right? That's by definition an early retirement that you're not going to see in most other professions. So if you are, preparing yourself and lining yourself up with that pension to retire at 55, you're retired early, right? Compared to other people, that is by definition what you're heading. So it's just a great benefit that we have as teachers to have that option. And then of course, if you want to, you can speed that up. It takes much more intentionality. It takes a lot more forethought. Using things like maybe the 457 is a great vehicle that when you put the money in, when you stop working for that employer, you can draw that money out penalty free, and not tax free, but penalty free. And you can put in money into a Roth IRA. You can pull out those contributions, not the growth, but contributions without penalty. HSA for medical expenses. But if you are like saving your receipts for medical expenses throughout your entire career, you can be like, well, I'm pulling this out for this medical expense, years ago. That's allowed in the HSA. So there's lots of places you can put your money to prepare to bridge that gap if you want to. But once again, retiring at 55 is 10 to 15 years earlier than most of your peers are going to be able to retire in a traditional sense without any penalty.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the 457 too, because that's a wonderful option for many teachers. In many cases, the 457 is even recommended above the 403B for a lot of teachers. Unfortunately, here in Texas, we don't have access to the state sponsored 457. So our 457 options run through our plan administrators. And they like to, at least in my district, they tack on an asset under management fee on top of that. And it's like 0.86% on top of the mutual fund fees, which, for the nerdy ones of us, yeah, that's not 0.86 is not real bad, but it's not real good either. And so we have opted to go with the taxable brokerage option. And I think I can grow it more and more than cover and offset that. And I'd rather pay some of those capital gains than pay an asset under management.
Yeah, the 457 is not for everyone because it is state by state, and your
Mhm.
case sometimes it's district by district, right? So you really need to, first of all, check to make sure you have one, and second of all, make sure it's actually a good one, right? Just like a 403b, you don't just say, "Oh, I'm investing for my future in a 403b. Sure, why not? I'll just put money in wherever the dart happens to land when I throw it at that huge list of names that my district offers." Right?
Uh,
You need to.
61 names in my district.
61? How
Yes,
how can
sir.
anyone even choose between 61 options?
I
That's
have
absurd.
no idea. I mean, look, I'm so thankful for resources like 403b that can actually take a look at a list of 61 names and dissect what's good and what's bad and make some suggestions because yeah, the lists out here in Texas are ridiculous.
I'm, I'm sure they're ridiculous in most places. I am so fortunate that at the school I teach at, we have one vendor and they're a good one.
Mhm.
I, I didn't even have to think about it. My school said, "This is your vendor," and they're a good one. And I said, "Perfect." So that I invest in my 403b because that's the best option for me. I don't have a 457 option currently. Uh, so I invest in a 403b with a good 403b, but 61, like I had like 15 at the school I taught at in Texas. And I had no way of knowing. The only thing I knew for sure was that I didn't want, don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Equitable. I didn't want the company that's getting sued constantly to be my provider. And yeah,
Yeah.
anyway, I have a whole tangent about how terrible they were and how I got in trouble for trying to tell my other teachers not to use them. Because apparently you're not supposed to tell them, "Hey, by the way, your financial future is at risk if you use this company."
I've not
Anyways,
gotten in trouble yet, but I do try and spread the word about some of that. And I've passed around that SEC article about them being sued. And yeah, it's I'm out there with you.
I'm so glad that we have, like you said, 403 Wise to help us navigate this because they're not the only company. They're the most prominent one, but they're not the only one that is doing pretty shady things. I'm sure out of that
Oh,
61 list, you have maybe five that are actually worthwhile.
two.
Two,
Yeah,
see, even less.
we have Vanguard, and then we have Aspire, which sells Vanguard funds with a minimal markup. So really,
You have
we should
Vanguard.
only be using one.
Yeah. Okay. Man,
Yeah,
60 to one. That's ouch.
yeah,
Okay.
it's incredible. Now, some of those are legacy provide. I don't know how many of them are, you can't open new accounts with, but they're still servicing old accounts. But that was very few out of the 61 when I looked at that list a couple years ago.
This is why I have a podcast to tell people about this. Like this is like the main issue. Seriously, wow, that I'm
Yeah.
still just reeling with how ridiculous that is.
Yeah, they're so predatory, they're so dangerous, they're so they prey on teachers, and it's really sad and unfortunate.
Oh man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, need to calm
Yeah.
down.
We could both go on tangents about that, I'm sure.
Let's calm down, refocus. So we were talking about how you're preparing to retire at 55. That I think that's great. You have all those options leading up to you, and just for fun, when you're retired, say as at 55,
Hmm.
what's the thing that you really want to do when you get there? Because I think that's what most people are missing when they're thinking like $6,000 a month, or whatever it is for you guys now, going into retirement accounts. Like
Yeah.
I could do a lot with $6,000 a month. I mean, like
Oh
I
yeah.
spent that much on a trip to Fiji. I could go to Fiji every single month, if I really like that's a lot of money. So like what are you looking forward to with that money that you're investing?
I'm looking forward to doing what I want to do when I want to do it. My wife and I, we really want to travel. We have found ways to hack and travel for low cost now. Cause I know some people are probably thinking, man, like you must never leave the house. Like, no, like now we travel. We have gone to many things and weekend trips. And just last month, my wife really likes Post Malone, and she loves his country album. And he announced a tour a few months ago and wasn't coming to Dallas area, even though he's from here. but he was going to Nashville. My wife said, let's go to Nashville. So we booked a hotel, we booked a flight, and we went to Nashville for a weekend. And so, yeah, we still do a lot of things and still spend a lot of money, but we do prioritize the saving and the traveling and the things that we want to do. We want to travel even more. I wouldn't mind getting an RV and traveling around. I want to spend a lot of time with my daughter. When I'm 55, she'll be in her last couple of years of high school. And so whatever she's involved in, I want to be there to take her to. I want to be present in that. And so we want to do that. But I would love to be able to call the guys at 403B Wise and say, what are you working on? What do you need somebody to do? I don't want to be paid. I just want to help. And I would love to be able to do that. I'd love to call the people at NGPF and Tim Ranzetta and that team that run that so phenomenally well and just say, hey, what are you doing? What are you working on? I've got time and I've got a passion to help. And that's what I want to be able to do. I want to be able to spend my time doing those things, helping other teachers talk about money, talk about finance, helping teachers and helping teachers help students.
Man, yeah, a heart to serve. That's what it's about, right? When we have the money, we can turn around and we can help others, right? Teachers want to help. I've seen so many teachers who want to just give, give, give. But if you don't have the financial wherewithal to keep doing that, it's going to detriment you mentally, it's going to detriment you financially. But if you can build that, if you can have that financial cushion to be able to then turn around and really give, really serve, really help, it can make all the difference.
Yeah, and be able to set that example too for my daughter of giving and helping and having the servant heart and the joy that you get from being able to help others. If I can have the time to be like, hey, you know what, let's go to the dog shelter and let's just go walk some dogs and let's go have fun with that and walk them around. If we can go, serve people at a homeless shelter on Thanksgiving and, do things like that and just set that example for our daughter. And we do, and we try to set that example now in as many ways as possible. But if we can show her what we can do with our time, when she is a young adult, and I think that would be very powerful for her.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so excited for what you're going to be able to do with your life when you get there. I mean, like you're doing it now, but like just so much more. I think that is a worthy goal, and you are well on your way to getting there and beyond. I'm sure that you're going to have more than enough when you get there. And I think that's really what this is all about, is having more than just enough, because your pension is probably going to be enough, but having more than enough to really give and do and what you really, really want to do and help others the way you really want to is what really matters.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Ryan, it's been so much fun having you talking about this and, keeping us from ranting about really important things, but it's been a good time. I just have a couple more questions for you. I want to ask, what is your number one tip for teachers to have a richer wallet, classroom, and life?
That's a good question, Shaun. My biggest thing, especially as the author or co-author with Carl Fish in the Texas series of his TLDR book, is learn the rules of the game. We are all playing this financial game in life, whether we know it or not. And a lot of people don't know it or don't look at it that way. And we go through and we don't know the rules of the game. You wouldn't go play football or baseball or get in an adult softball league or whatever without knowing the rules of the game. And the same should be true of your finances. And most of us don't really know the rules of our pension plans, or at least that's been my experience here in Texas. And I'll give you an example. Here in Texas, and I don't know if this was your experience when you were in the classroom, but I have found this in people that I've talked to all across DFW and even in like the Houston area. A lot of older teachers like to sit on their high horse and they like to tell these new teachers as they come in, I get to retire under the rule of 80 and you have to wait till the rule of 90. Did you hear that when you were in the classroom?
I never heard anyone. I mean, I heard the lament like, oh, the pension's worse now than it was, but I never heard any high horsing it, which is I'm grateful for that.
No, that's good because I hear it all the time, and I've stopped other teachers that are telling our young teachers you have to wait until the rule of 90 to retire. And that's simply not true. People here, we just don't know the rules of the game. Everybody in Texas can retire under the rule of 80. We have some penalties if you retire before the age of the newer teachers, depending on what tier you're in, but the newer teachers, including myself, I'm in the last tier 5. We can retire under the rule of 80, which would allow me to draw a pension at 55. I take a penalty for every year that I do it before 62, but I can retire under the rule of 80. And that's not what we tell our teachers. I've told so many teachers, you can retire under the rule of 80. I just saved you 5 years of working.
And 5 years of working where you probably are just like hating what
Yeah.
you're doing at that point, right? That's another one of my huge goals is I don't want those teachers who are just there like, it's 2 more years and I can draw my pension. If you are sitting there saying just 2 more years, just 2 more years, you shouldn't be
Yeah.
teaching anymore, right?
I
You
feel
should
sorry
be,
for the students. Yeah.
yeah. You don't have
Yeah.
the passion there anymore. If you're just
Yeah.
there to hold on to your pension, you are not helping your students the way that they deserve.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's so knowing the rules of the game is so incredibly important. And just not just taking the word of those senior teachers, because they don't know the rules of the game either. So you've got the blind leading the blind, and that penalty that we pay for retiring before 62, it's it adds up for every year, but it's really not that much. It's very easy to overcome that penalty by putting a little bit of money, $100 a month, $200 a month into a 457 or a taxable brokerage account. It can very easily be made up. But knowing those rules is just so important because that rule of 90 thing is just kind of, man, I'll go on a whole nother tangent about that. But I know your audience is more than just Texas, but that's just an example here. And I'm sure there are people in other states that don't know the rules of the game where they're at either.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
mean,
just,
every pension is so different, so complicated. I mean, that's why Carl has the books
mm-hmm.
because it's too long. No one read it, and they get like these like brief little things from their HR at the very beginning, and then they think they know what they're talking about. Maybe if they paid attention and didn't doodle during the presentation, and then that's what you're going off of instead of actually knowing what you're really aiming towards and what you're going to get as a result.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's so important. Know what your pension is going to look like and then plan accordingly, right? If your pension is going to give you the life that you want, then just work towards that pension.
Absolutely.
But if it's not going to get you the life you want, make some other goals, make some other changes accordingly to reach your goal because money helps you reach goals. It doesn't make your life possible, right? It's just you gotta reach goals with that money. Right? It's not the only thing in life that matters. So use
Yeah.
the money for what you want it to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right. Well, I got one more question for you, Ryan, as we're closing up here. If a teacher has maybe a question about the Texas pension, if they're a Texas teacher, or
Mm-hmm.
they just wanted some more information from you, want to talk to you and connect with you, how could they connect with you?
Shaun, I don't have a blog. I don't have a podcast. I don't have a website. I'm just a teacher. But my personal email address is in the book series. And so I'm happy to share that. My personal email address is ryan.cruz, CRUZ 19 at gmail.com. And I'm happy to answer any questions that people may have. But remember, I'm not a professional. I'm more of a hobbyist looking to help other people. So I'm pretty knowledgeable and I'm free, but also sometimes advice is worth what you pay for it. So take it with a grain of salt, right? But I'm happy to share any of my understandings with people of the pension system, or any other questions that they may have. I'm happy to talk and expand my network.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan, so much for coming on the show. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
If you'd like to contact Ryan with his email or see any of the other things that we link to, such as ngpf.org or 43bwise.org, you can go to our show notes at teachermoneyshow.com/podcast, and you'll find the links to this show and any other show there. As a teacher, I bet you hate Cliff Notes, but as a student, I bet you love them. So here's the Cliff Notes version of my interview with Ryan. The Cliff Notes are brought to you by Fidelity. They aren't really a sponsor, but I can dream, right? However, if you look in the show notes or go to teachermoneyshow.com/podcast, you can find a referral link that if you use it, if you plan on opening up an account anyway, I will be able to get some kickback from Fidelity, which will help support the show. I use Fidelity for my own IRA. Their interface is great. Their products are low fee, and that's all you can ask for in an investment company. And since we have talked about all the ways that Ryan is investing for his future, I highly recommend that you get on it. Start investing in something, whether that's a Roth IRA or an HSA, which I also have used Fidelity for, or anything else that you wanting to put money aside for. That is what Fidelity is there for. Now on to the Cliff Notes. Here are my top Cliff Notes, the best, most important things to take away from my interview with Ryan. First of all, it takes sacrifice to get out of debt. Ryan was working extra. His wife was working extra. They weren't buying underwear so that way they could get out of 60 grand of debt in less than a year. Wow. Okay. We're talking about teachers getting out of what would be a really nice teacher's salary worth of debt in less than a year. That is incredible. I would bet that they were working extra hard during that summer, right? During those breaks that they have, because that is the time to really crank it out when you have that debt, when you're trying to just accelerate that knockdown, knock it out of the park. That is what that time is for. Sacrifice. Don't go on all these big fancy trips. Don't buy that new phone. Don't buy that new car. Buy your freedom by paying off debt. I love that. Next, maxing things out, maxing out your Roth IRA when you have a lower income, because teachers, even if you're making the most money that most teachers make, you're still in a pretty low income bracket versus other things. So I would consider going the Roth option, just because having that Roth account where you put the money in, it's taxed already, but it can then grow and then you can pull that money out tax-free later. That is so powerful. The HSA is another great option. Putting money into an HSA, because it will grow. You go in, no taxes. It grows, no taxes. And then if you pull out for a qualified medical expense, or after you reach that government retirement age, that money is never taxed, ever. It is a fantastic account. Okay, I've always put money into an HSA because it is so important. Now, of course, you might not have access to an HSA depending on your health insurance, but most health insurance options today are provided with an HSA version, just because people like them. So if you have an HSA option, highly consider you look into that. And also, I have a whole episode talking about how to figure out if you should go with the HSA version versus going with a lower deductible version of your health insurance. And I'll link to that in the show notes at teachermoneyshow.com/podcast. You'll be able to find it there. He was putting aside 25% of gross annual income a year. Now, gross includes the money that's going out for your pension, your health insurance, your taxes. All of that goes into your gross. So like, you might be making gross 60 grand, but then you're really only taking home 45. So he was putting away 25% of that 60, not of the take-home pay, which is really impressive. And it just shows us that we all can do it if we are willing to make those sacrifices. But it depends on where you live as well, and there are lots of factors go into that. But once again, if you really want this, sacrifice is the name of the game. He has been willing to do a lot to bring himself the amount of freedom that he's going to have. Mr. Cruz is going to be a multi-millionaire, and he tells the students that, and I believe him. Freedom to retire early is the next important thing. He was buying himself freedom. Not that he is going to retire early, but he can retire early because he has the money set aside to be able to retire without worrying about pension penalties, without worrying about when his wife will be able to retire and this or that. He's just putting money aside so that way he can retire at the time that he is ready. And that will probably be 55, which by most standards is early retirement. I mean, your friends that got, the big fancy job that are getting a lot more money are going to work till 65, unless they are doing, the very, disciplined things to set money aside to be able to retire early. But 55 with a pension is Wow. Once again, look at your own state's pension rules, but he is 55 with a pension. That'd be like being able to retire at 55 with Social Security for your, other friends that aren't in education. And they don't have that option. They're going to have to save every single dime that they want to be able to use for their retirement if they're going to retire at 55. Well, if you have that option in your pension, you can just get up to that point and then you have that safety net already put in place. That is such a blessing. And then lastly, he had 61 403B options. What? That just blew my mind. And I'm so grateful we have 403bwise.org as an option. I love that organization. They are just doing so much good work to help teachers figure out 403bs. So if you look at your vendor list for 403bs at your school and you have 61 options or 30 options or even 12, there's no way that you're going to have time as a busy teacher being able to sort through which of those are good by yourself. Go to 403bwise.org, look up your district. Almost guaranteed they already have your district and their vendors loaded up and just a list of they're good, they're bad, they're bad, they're bad, they're bad, they're bad, they're bad, they're good. Right? They'll just tell you who's good, who's bad, who's and you'll be able to figure that out. And if not, if there's no vendor on there, you can submit it to them and they will do the work for you. And if your school district's on there, you can probably find those vendors elsewhere because the vendors have probably already been vetted by 403bwise.org. I will link to 403bwise.org in the show notes at teachermoneyshow.com/podcast, or you can find the show notes link in the episode description. Just highly recommend that you use that resource. Now, if you found this episode talking to Ryan about his story to be extremely helpful, I highly recommend that you share this with a teacher friend. Let another teacher know about this really important story of how you can, as a teacher, knock out 60 grand of debt in a year. How you can, as a teacher, retire at 55 if that's what you want. That you have options because teachers are incredible and you can do it. Just remember, as a teacher, you are already rich. Your wallet just needs to catch up. Are you worried you won't have enough money to retire? Or maybe you just don't know how you're going to get out of all of this debt. Whatever your situation is, I can help you. Go to teachermoneyshow.com/guest and fill out the form there. And you can come on the show for free coaching, or we can meet one-on-one to discuss your needs. I look forward to talking to you.